This podcast is part of the C-Suite Radio Network, turning the volume up on business.
Welcome to the Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer. Join us as Deb talks with her guests, experts in their fields, as they share real-life stories and techniques to power up your business.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited today because I'm talking with somebody from Colorado who's in Colorado. And it was so funny. We were chatting before the program. We never met each other when I lived in Colorado. And so at some point we will remedy that. But it's always fun talking to somebody back in Colorado. And I hadn't realized that my guest was in Colorado till I was reading her great book and she was referring to places in Colorado. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. So it was very fun. And so please join me in welcoming Karen Brown to our program today. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Deb. Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, especially talking to another Colorado native.
I know. It's funny. There's not a lot of natives. Big state, but not a lot of natives. And so it's always fun talking to somebody and being able to share things. And I loved reading your book, and we'll obviously talk more about that in detail, because you referred to places that I recognized. And I was like, oh, old home week. Mm-hmm. So it was fun. But let me tell people just a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into this.
Okay.
So Karen Brown is the CEO of Velocity Leadership Consulting, an executive leadership coaching firm specializing in elevating leadership performance and impact using behavioral neuroscience techniques. Karen realized her own performance potential and discovered the scientific keys to greater personal and professional success by achieving a lifelong dream of competing in the Ironman World Championships as a recreational athlete at the tender age of 46. She parlayed this model with 20 years of experience and study in senior leadership, business coaching, and professional mastery level coaching certifications to help leaders elevate their performance and impact with greater velocity and ease. Karen is a CEO who makes a difference. So again, Karen, welcome.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here with your audience.
Great. Well, let's tell us a little bit about how you got where you are today, because it's a great story. And then we'll talk more, especially about Ironman and things like that. But how did you get to where you are today?
So I was a executive leader for 20 years and was an internal business coach.
Okay.
And this is before business coaching was a thing. Like that didn't even exist. There weren't any people.
Right. If you said coach,
coaches.
People looked for basketball.
Right. But what it meant was I was the boss and I was building up team members. Right. And so I took to that like a duck to water, primarily because I'm fascinated with human behavior. And so I was good at coaching each team member. And what I did find, though, was there was this place that we couldn't get past.
Okay.
I didn't know what it was at the time. And fast forward, when I wanted to pursue my lifelong dream of competing in the Ironman World Championships. And, this wasn't anything that, would have been on somebody like mine radar. I mean, I had never competed in any triathlons.
Wow.
I was a terrible swimmer. I had never ridden a road bike. I had never run a marathon.
And
so
you
this
set your goal
like,
at the highest it could be.
Oh, yeah. Total recreational athlete. I was a runner primarily, and that was about it. And would go to the gym 6 days a week, for an hour, pretty typical kind of stuff. And yet I had this big, hairy, audacious, crazy dream of competing in one of the toughest human endeavors on the planet. So what I realized when I went to a business class was that I had been holding myself back for 28 years from that dream and also other bigger professional goals through something called limiting beliefs. And limiting beliefs are when we think or say well, I don't have enough money, time, talent, ability, fill in the blank to achieve that. Never knew this was going on because it all happened in my unconscious mind. So I was never consciously
And it starts like when we're 3 years old.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I can go into the science of it because once I discovered how this worked and on a bigger scale, how the unconscious mind works and that it really drives the vast majority of everything we think and do in a day, then I jumped wholeheartedly into it, wanted to become an expert in the field and realized it was the bridge to that place that I could not get beyond in 20 years of being an effective business coach.
Right. You know, and it's interesting because there is that self-talk that we do. And, so I want to talk about your book because we're going to jump right into this. So this is a great book and loved reading it. And it focuses on your competition in Ironman. But of course it brings, everything as you're reading it, it brings it into anybody can, we are lazy slugs. We can understand it as well. But, when you were talking about those beliefs, it was interesting because I've been having sessions out here with a hypnotherapist for a variety of reasons. But one of them is, obviously some mental things. And I remember one of the things I told her was, I can't remember people's names. I'm just horrible with remembering people's names. And she looked at me and she said, no, you're not. And I said, no, I am. And she said, you have told yourself you're bad at remembering people's names. And so it's not going to matter in the slightest what anybody does until you tell yourself, I'm good at remembering people's names. Yeah. And we have those self-talks, and maybe it is something that, started when we were very young. I can't do that. I'm not smart enough, good enough, strong enough. As little girls, a lot of times we're really told that, we can't do sports. We can't, do all of these various things, and luckily things are changing. But, my generation was told, you really can't do math. Girls don't do math. And I was like, well, no, I can do that. I like things like that. And so, those outside talks became our internal talks. And so I love when I was reading your book, how in many, it was one of those things where at each step you kind of had to overcome those limiting thoughts that you had, starting with the fact that you'd never even done something like this. So why on earth would you be so silly as to jump into the biggest thing? Why didn't you just start small? You set your goal the biggest it could be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is what I found is true for all of us. All of us, because it's through our unconscious mind and it's the way that our unconscious mind is wired to work, right? In caveman days, our unconscious mind had to instantaneously size up a situation and decide whether something was friend, food, or foe and get us to take immediate action so that we could survive another day. Well, that's still how it works. And what happens is it's a judging mechanism. So we usually compare ourselves to someone or something else that we want to do or has done what we want to do. And through that comparison bias, we see a gap. And then immediately our unconscious mind jumps into action and says, nope, we're not going to be able to do that. So what's fascinating though is this spectrum exists. On one side of the spectrum is limiting beliefs. The nope, we're not going to be able to do that. On the other side of the spectrum is the ability to carry out anything we can think up. Recreational athlete competing in and crossing the finish line at the Ironman World Championships. Right. And I mean, these stories are everywhere, right? Think of icons of success like Richard Branson, Warren Miller, Jeff Bezos. I mean, the list is 10 million miles long, right? But that spectrum exists. So what I realized is, okay, wait a minute. All of us have the ability to either think up reasons why we can't, which is limiting beliefs and how they work. And it's a pattern, right? That's all it is. It's a pattern. Or to think up ways that we can achieve something. And that's why I wrote the book, because limiting beliefs is the number one scientifically proven way that all of us hold ourselves back
Mm-hmm.
from greater levels of success
Mm-hmm.
or achieving big goals and dreams.
Right. And many times it is that you're not smart enough, pretty enough, handsome enough. You're, and then of course we have the self-fulfilling prophecies. The people who always pick partners who might cheat on them. Well, you somewhere you are maybe telling yourself that's all you deserve. And so you're kind of looking for that person who has that propensity, all of these various things. And it is, I love, looking at the differences between men and women, because I don't think it's so much that women are really told that we're limited, but I think it's more men are told that they can really succeed.
Yes. Let me speak to that
yeah.
for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Because I see this in my
Mm-hmm.
practice all the time. So first of all, limiting beliefs are preceded by something called a limiting decision.
Mm-hmm.
And in that scenario that I just talked about, where we compare ourselves through comparison bias to someone or something else,
Mm-hmm.
that's when our unconscious mind makes a limiting decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then it literally goes out, becomes proactive in looking for valid evidence,
Mm-hmm.
more evidence that is correct.
Right. Because we want to be right.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Then that's where limiting beliefs come in, right? So we've made this limiting decision.
Mm-hmm.
Then you said self-fulfilling prophecy,
Mm-hmm.
which are actually limiting beliefs, because then those create our actions.
Right.
So then you're right. We do actively, because our unconscious mind is looking for it, we actively look for and find the spouse that will cheat on us,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's exactly how this works. And these patterns are just repeated over and over and over
Mm-hmm.
until we become aware of them and choose to actively change them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's how it works gender-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So women's limiting decisions are usually something having to do with I'm not good enough.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is just the way we're wired. Now, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that we can't rewire it. We
Mm-hmm.
certainly can.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, men's are more of a limiting decision of, well, I have to figure it all out for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I can't ask for help.
Right.
And I have to do it all myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really sets up all of our thoughts, which
Mm-hmm.
drives our actions that then create or produce the platform
Mm-hmm.
for which the things that we deem are possible,
Right.
or not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The problem is, though, that we think those things are facts,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and they're not.
Mm-hmm.
They're literally a pattern of our unconscious
Mm-hmm.
mind.
Right. And some of it is, as you said, a kind of a protective thing. We don't want to get hurt. We
Mm-hmm.
don't want to apply for that other position, because if we don't get it, that's going to be crushing. We don't want to start our own business because we might fail. All of these various things. So we want to be protecting ourselves. Or, like you said with men, they don't want to do something where it's going to be clear that they don't know what they're doing, or that they might have to ask for help, because that fragile male ego. But it is we can understand why we want to protect ourselves, but then it's all about kind of pushing past that. And
Right. Because in the end, that's exactly what holds us
Right.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so talk us through, because the premise of, kind of where you started was this Ironman competition. You went from, as you said, just kind of casually, working. Now, I have to admit, I got tired just reading your book. I am one of those couch potato people. But, and so just the thought of it, and it was, but, while it was daunting, at the same point, I was just fascinated, and I kept thinking, oh my gosh, how cool was this? So kind of talk us through, why on earth did you even decide that was something? And then, tell us a little bit about what an Ironman is, because, not a lot of people probably know what that is.
Okay. So an Ironman
Mm-hmm.
is a very short race that is a 2.4 mile swim in the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
a 112 mile bike ride,
Mm-hmm.
finished off with a 26.2 mile marathon.
Right.
And it's
And
all
it's
done
done in
continuously.
one day, right?
In one day. Yeah. So you have 17 hours to do it. It took me 15 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And was also one of the greatest days of my entire life. One of the happiest days.
I bet.
Yeah.
Well, and
which seems a contradictory in terms, right?
But because you achieved a goal that was just, it, like you said, the big, hairy, audacious goal. And, and you achieved it. You didn't win first place, but that wasn't really what you set out to do. I mean, your goal was to finish it, and you did finish it. Like you said, you finished it under the time allocated.
Mm-hmm. And here's the why. Because that's a big question, right? Like, why?
Why would you put your body through
myself through this? And why did I want to do this? Yeah. So let me set the context. So I was 44 years old. I had never competed in any triathlons at all. I had never run a marathon. I had never ridden a road bike. I was a terrible swimmer, a total recreational athlete. But I saw the Ironman on TV when I was 14 years old. And I remember being awestruck. I literally stopped in my tracks and sat down on the edge of the couch and just watched this whole drama unfold. Now, this was the day of Julie Moss, and you guys can Google that if you don't know who that is, because, I'm over 50 now. So anyway, it was like a train wreck unfolding. Like I said, drama.
Right.
And yet I couldn't take my eyes off of it. I had no idea what it was, but
it just looked
so
cool.
Yeah, but something happened when I watched it. A emotional chord deep inside me was struck. I mean, I was literally watching this drama and crying. And what I later figured out is the reason I was crying is because it touched a part of me that was going to reveal my purpose and be the gateway to who I was meant to be and the mission I was meant to accomplish. And, just opening up my entire life and my entire being. Right. Because up until this, I was successful. I was a successful executive. I had all the outer trappings of success, but I still had this nagging feeling deep inside that I wasn't fulfilled.
Right.
Like, is this really all there is?
Yeah. Something
Isn't there
was
more?
definitely missing.
Yeah. And I would have that feeling of fulfillment, even though I also would break into a cold sweat and almost throw up when I thought about the Ironman World Championship.
Right.
That's why I pursued it. Now, I didn't realize all of those things at the time, or for the 28 years that I kept watching the coverage and had this sort of secret dream that I wouldn't admit to myself, but it was still there. And I never knew what was stopping me from pursuing it or what the meaning of even pursuing it or achieving it was.
Right.
And it wasn't until that feeling inside me just kept growing and nagging at me that I could no longer ignore it. And it just grew bigger and bigger and bigger and overtook everything. So that everywhere I looked, it was, well, what about the Ironman? Well, what about the Ironman? Well, what about the Ironman?
Right.
And then I went to this class where I learned about limiting beliefs and instantaneously the Ironman came to my mind and I thought, that's it. I am done holding myself back from this and who I'm meant to be.
Right.
And then honestly, it was pretty straightforward. I won't say easy because, then I had to add just 22 training hours to my schedule every week and find a whole nother gear in everything in my life. I mean, up to this point, I was pretty highly organized and efficient. And I really had to up my game in everything, including nutrition and sleep and balance and everything. And I could not do that until I learned how the unconscious mind worked and started tapping into that. And then when I did that, you're right, I had to periodically overcome different limiting beliefs that would, that my unconscious mind would manufacture. But then by doing that, I crossed the finish line in 2 years. And that
I know.
experience
That was what was
transformed
amazing. You
every
trained
part of
just
my
for
life
2
and business.
years. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you didn't only have your own limiting beliefs. You had other people saying, nah, you can't, you shouldn't. Why are you doing that? Again, some who probably meant very well, but then others who just, nah, you shouldn't be doing that. Why, that's silly. Why would you want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, a lot of people just, okay, but the other thing that I got when I was reading your book was the fact that it wasn't just you. When you got your kind of core group of sisters, I'll let you explain that,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously coaches, good and bad, that was what made it happen. When it wasn't just you, when you had all of these, the right pieces kind of came together. And I think maybe that was one of the biggest lessons that I got out of the book was we don't have to do it alone. Whatever it is, we can pull in the people we need and let go of the people we don't. That I think was one of the other things. And so, talk to us about kind of that support system that you developed.
Yeah. Okay. So this story is in the book, but the biggest naysayer at the time I decided to pursue this was my husband.
Mm-hmm.
He literally said to me, you don't have what it takes.
Right.
You will never get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be, yeah. I want to be real clear with the audience about this, because this is the other thing about limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes others say that we are not capable of
Mm-hmm.
achieving something. And that has nothing to do with our ability, nor is it usually our limiting beliefs.
Right.
It's their limiting
Mm-hmm.
beliefs, and they're placing them upon us.
Right.
That's exactly what my husband was
Mm-hmm.
doing. And several other people. I mean, there were very malicious people that I swam with
Mm-hmm.
that said very mean things to me.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly, I think, because they were threatened.
Right. Yeah.
And you're going to run across that.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to run across that. That
Right.
is the dark side of human nature, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Now, the cool part,
doesn't matter what it is, whether it's work, personal life, any of those things.
Yeah. And like I said at the beginning, every single human being on the planet, and this is why my mission is to change this,
Mm-hmm.
every single human being on the planet struggles
Mm-hmm.
and stops themselves through limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's the number one scientifically proven thing, right?
Right.
So whenever you put something out there, I'm going to do this, I'm going to achieve this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to, embark on this mission, you're going to have people immediately who say, no, I don't think you're going to be able to do that. That's crazy. That's
Mm-hmm.
silly.
Right.
Why would you want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want to put yourself through that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, just distance yourself from those people and realize that it's their limiting beliefs that are getting in your way. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then go on about your business and conquer your own limiting beliefs. All right. Now, the cool thing was, as soon as I made this decision and voiced it, there were important women in my life who immediately, without batting an eye, said, I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to get there. What can I do to help?
Mm-hmm.
That was my best friend. That was my sister.
Mm-hmm.
That was my mom. And they became what we called at the race Team Sisters, because we were the sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So surround yourself with those people.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people, and there are several poignant stories about how Crystal and my sister did this for me.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people that will lift you back up when you fall down.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think you can't do it, and when you are tempted to give up.
Right.
Because one of the other keys of the 7 in the book is do what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to conquer your limiting beliefs first, because you can't even get out of the starting gate until you do that.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is you've got to do what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me to go from 6 hours a week of working out to 22,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a full-time, very challenging job, and, a relatively new marriage, and I mean, a whole bunch of other stuff, as all of us do. You got to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
This is not conquer limiting beliefs, tell the universe what you want, and poof, it'll show up at your door.
Right.
you have to actually do what it takes. Well, a lot of times in the doing what it takes, we run into significant challenges and obstacles and a lot of temptation to just give up.
Right.
These are the people that will pull you back up and say, nope, you are doing this for a really big reason. And you know what? I love you enough to tell you, you're not going to stop. I'm not going to let you stop. Keep going. You can do this.
Well, and we need that as people. I mean, we're not solitary creatures. I always wonder about, when you read the stories about people who've gone off on their own and lived, off the grid, and all those various things. And I mean, clearly I'm a very social person. So maybe that's part of why it's just hard for me to understand this. But, we need other people. And, that's one of the things that I have found that people tell me a lot about is, people who have home-based businesses. It tends to be very alone. We're in our guest room, we're in our basement, we're wherever our home office is, and we're just toiling merrily along with what we're doing. We might have the belief that we can do it, and all of those various things, but we're still alone. And to me, that really has been one of the hardest things is developing kind of that core of people. And, whether it's, a close group or even just, people that I see at networking things, we are social creatures. And I think that's one of the things that people sometimes really do tend to forget is, just because you're working from home certainly doesn't mean that you need to be so isolated. And, thank heavens for technology and, things like this where we can be doing things like this. But, we need those people around us. And sometimes we need those people to give us, as you said, that swift kick, that get up off of your, what, stop feeling sorry for yourself. You can do this. That we need our cheerleaders.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what the biggest thing I learned through that part of the process was to ask for help. I mean, like probably everyone listening right now, I was an achiever, which meant I did things, through my own grit and determination and et cetera. And through the Ironman process, I could not do it alone. And I was not used to asking for help.
Right.
And you know what? I got real good at it. Yeah, because it takes others. It takes a village. We are social creatures. We crave connection. We're tribal. We're a tribal species. And I can't tell you how many times I would just think, well, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I would literally just kind of ruminate in that question. And then I would start verbalizing to people. I would just start sharing it.
Right.
And say, well, here's the latest thing that I'm faced with. And every single time, like as soon as I started sharing that, boom, somebody would show up with an answer, with a resource, with an idea, and it would be the exact thing that I needed.
Right.
Wow.
That's why mastermind groups, and things like that can be so valuable because nothing is completely unique, no problem, no situation. We might think it is, might feel like it is, but somebody else has probably gone through that. But, it comes back to that limiting belief that we have that there's something wrong with us if we have to ask for help. And it's actually the exact opposite. It's recognizing who we are and then being able to say, I need help. Whether it's I need an Ironman coach or I need an accountant or, whatever it is, there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying I need help.
It's actually the stronger person that can recognize that and ask for help. Hey, I don't know the answer to this. What do you think?
Right.
Will you help me with this? Yeah.
Right. So, you competed and now what made because there are Ironman competitions around the world, what made Hawaii, which is where you competed, what made it kind of the ultimate? I was just curious as I was reading the book, why, it has really nothing to do with anything. I just wondered why Hawaii was kind of the ultimate.
You are the first one to ask me that question. And it's so insightful, Deb. This is why I'm so excited to be on your show. Okay, so a couple reasons. Number one, it is the best of the best. It's the World Championships,
Okay.
which means the best athletes in the entire world come together and have to compete for even the opportunity to compete in this race.
Right.
And I was always the type of person that loved a huge, gigantic, enormous challenge. My mom always said, yeah, if it wasn't a big challenge, you weren't interested. If it was a big, crazy, outrageous challenge that, you know, not a whole lot of people could do, you were in. Like you were all about it. You were interested. So I think that's first and foremost, that it is the best. It is the toughest. And it's also what I first came into contact with. It's the Ironman coverage of the World Championships in Hawaii that I first saw on TV. And that whole image was burned into my brain for 28 years. I also happen to be a big fan of Hawaii. I love racing in hot weather, hot, sticky, humid weather. That's my venue. I do not like cold or rainy kind of situations. So it was just, you know, it was my thing. It resonated deep inside me.
Right. Well, you know, you took these experiences, and we talked about this a little bit when I introduced you, and you created Velocity Leadership Consulting because you kind of pivoted from the industry you were in to this consulting field. So what made you decide that, you know, and you've said a little bit about, you know, you feel that, you know, this is your passion to help people. So tell us a little bit more about why you started Velocity.
Great question. So 2 reasons. First one, I'm going to be completely real with your audience. I was fired from a CEO role, one that I thought I was really good in. And at first I made all the typical excuses. Well, the board doesn't see my vision. It must have been politically driven, et cetera, et cetera.
You were a woman.
I didn't even go there, but I could have. But here's the truth of it. It took the pain of being fired for me to finally take stock and realize that I had some behavioral patterns, some behavioral blind spots, if you will, that were holding me back, that were the reasons I got fired and the reasons I didn't even see of why I should have been fired. Yeah. And so once I came to understand, again, how the unconscious mind works and how it drives these behavioral patterns and how they become blind spots for us, I thought, okay, first of all, this is what I want to bring to the world, these 7 keys. And through them, I want to eradicate limiting beliefs and transform the world.
Right.
And founding Velocity, the reason for that was because I don't want other leaders to go through what I did. And I don't want other people in the organization to go through the pain of having a leader with behavioral blind spots.
Right.
Because it always causes a painful impact to everyone in the organization.
Oh, definitely.
And there's a lack of organizational results, right? So I thought, okay, when we can work on that and elevate performance and impact with greater velocity, that's exactly what I want to do. And so Velocity Leadership Consulting was born in 2012.
I love it. Well, you've mentioned the 7 keys to greater success. Tell us a little bit more. And, you know, we don't have to do 1, 2, 3. Tell us a little bit more about some of those.
Well, they're all neuroscience techniques.
Okay.
And again, starts with conquering limiting beliefs, which I'll give listeners something at the end, which is a worksheet on how to actually do it. Yeah, it's very effective. It's also very quick. So it starts with conquering limiting beliefs. Then there's the other one that I already spoke about, which was doing what it takes, right? Because oftentimes I have found that at the beginning of some pursuit, we have an idea of what it's going to take. And that's usually when we jump in and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Sure.
And then along the way, we find out that it's going to take more than we thought.
Right.
Yeah, that was certainly the case with the Ironman. I mean, I've spoken about 22 training hours, but that was just the first thing. That was just the tip of the iceberg. There were a whole bunch of things after that. all of which I thought, oh, wow, would I really have embarked upon this if someone would have laid all this out in front of me and told me this is everything it's going to take?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been scared to death. But, it happens one step at a time. And so you deal with it and you say, okay, well, now this is what it's going to take. So, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do that. And then the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and you just keep going until you get there. Yeah. So do what it takes. Also, the last one I'll talk about, and the rest, you got to pick up the book to get.
I know. Get the book.
But the last one is tap into the dream. So I've spoken a lot about, that this was a big, scary, audacious, crazy dream, and that it had a big emotional component for me, right? Well, this is a very powerful technique of opening up your unconscious mind and tapping into the power of it. When we identify a big dream that we do not know for sure if we're going to be able to accomplish, that's a key of it. And then we spend time visualizing what it's going to look, feel, and sound like to achieve. Yeah. And the more visuals we can put in front of us, the better, because literally what we're doing, and this is also what we're doing somewhat in Conquering Limiting Beliefs, is we are telling our unconscious mind, that's what I want. That's who I am. That's what we're going to get. Then the really cool part is, remember that spectrum I spoke about? Our unconscious mind takes over on that end of the spectrum of helping us carry out anything we can think up. And our reticular activation system jumps into action. Google that if you don't know what that is. And it literally starts going out like radar, like looking for resources and ways and hearing conversations and, catching things over email or on the internet or on our phone that we never saw before that help us with what we have said we want to achieve. Right. It's amazing. And this is one way that the unconscious mind is so powerful.
Right. And there's obviously, so many studies that show that, we use just a minute portion of our brain, and a good portion of what is going on is the unconscious things, the things that we do because we've learned how to do that. Like great example, when you're driving somewhere, you're not thinking, turn this, poke this, do that, you just do, and that's where a lot of this comes in, is it needs to become that pattern, that process that is just ingrained in you, and one of the things that I got from the book was the fact that it needs to be ingrained in us that we can do it. We're pushing aside that limiting belief and bringing in, we can do it. Back to my very simple thing of, I can remember names. I can remember names. Now, that sounds silly, but when we start repeating that, but then it's also, giving ourselves kind of the ability to say, okay, I forgot this person's name, but I'm still really good at remembering names, or, because we are going to kind of fall back. And, you talked about the fact that your friends would push you forward. We need to do that ourselves too. We need to say, oh, okay, well, this didn't work out exactly the way I planned on, or, I said I'd remember everybody's name and I forgot that person. Okay, the world didn't come to an end, and so then we can go forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. This makes me think of a conversation I had just yesterday with a client who's a COO that we work with, who's a female. And she was saying, I said, well, okay, so, what's the objective we're working on? And she told me. And then she was very quick to say, well, I've done this and this and this and this and this, and I said, okay. So if you've done those things, why don't you have this yet?
Right.
Right. And it caused her to stop, which is interrupting that pattern that she's been running, over and over and over again, right? Who knows how long she's been running that same pattern, but that's what we have to do. We have to interrupt the pattern. And even before we can interrupt it, we have to become aware of the pattern, right? Because all this stuff goes on unconsciously, right? We're not consciously aware of it. Right. So when I finally became consciously aware of the limiting beliefs that were stopping me, not only blocking me from bigger professional goals, but also the Ironman, it was like a wake-up call, the biggest wake-up call of my entire life, because then I was much quicker to become aware of other behavioral patterns and would go, oh, this is why I'm not getting that because of this behavioral pattern. Okay, so how do I change that? And that's exactly what I did with the COO, what we do with executives who work with us, because it really is, think of it this way. Our unconscious mind is the simplest, most powerful machine. So it will do exactly what we tell it. We tell it, nope, I can't do that, or that's going to be hard. I can't remember names. I'm not an effective COO, or whatever that pattern is going on in our head. That's exactly what is going to be carried out.
Right.
And like a lot of men, and I'll just put this right out there because we've been implying it, but we haven't said it. Men are really good at telling themselves, oh, I am this person. I am a CEO. I am a board member. I am a president. I am this. I am that. Whatever. And they just believe it and they go do it. Right. Well, that's also, they're harnessing the power of their unconscious mind.
Right. And that in many cases came from when they were very little. Their parents were telling them, you can do this, you can do this.
Yeah.
But one of the things that struck me as you were talking about this is, in many cases, we can't recognize it ourselves. I mean, because if we recognize it ourselves, we might be able to fix it. Right. So that's where working with someone like you helps, because you can say, oh, hey, have you ever, here is what you're seeing. Like you mentioned with the COO, she was thinking this is the way it is. And you saw kind of the catch in or the fly in the ointment maybe is, and so that's where it helps to have somebody that you are walking through this process with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point, Deb. These are blind spots, and they're called blind spots for a reason. Because we don't see them. It's just like, in driving, somebody's in your blind spot, you don't see them, you pull, into that lane and you're going to crash, right? Well, it's the same thing. I mean, even us coaches, we're highly trained, we're professional coaches, and we're also masters in neuro-linguistic programming and master practitioner. But we can't see our own blind spots either.
No.
Right? Yeah, that's a human trait. Yeah. And for those that may not know what neuro-linguistic programming is, and this is a key to what we do. Neuro-linguistic programming is the science of the words that we use and the way we say them, and also the energy behind them or lack of energy that allow us to pick up on what's going on for that individual. So it's amazing when we first start working with a client and we'll say, okay, so, what do you want? Or what's the objective? They'll share it with us. And then just like the COO story, I'll say, okay. And I'll say, so what have you done? What have you tried to get there? And then they'll tell us through them just telling us, I can pick up exactly what is holding them back. I can pick up on their blind spot. Then I ask them a question that opens that right up. And always they just go silent for a second and go, how did you know to ask me about that? I never thought about that. I never realized that that's what was causing it, that, the pattern came from, wherever. Yeah. Because again, we're not consciously aware of our own kinds of things. Right. Yeah. So it's also, this is again, why I call the company Velocity, because when you work with someone and they're an expert at this and they can see it and help you open it up really quickly and resolve it, then you achieve what you want with such great velocity and ease. It's sustainable, sustainable change. And the results are absolutely staggering. And, when I founded Velocity, I looked around in the marketplace and nobody does this work. Every other coach that I've ever run into, they all coach through the conscious mind. Okay, well, what's the problem? What are your options? And which one do you want to take?
Right.
No, obviously it's ineffective. Right.
And we need those things, so maybe it's that, you need a college degree for whatever it is. Okay. but why don't you have one? What were the limiting things? And some of them, it could be finance, could be whatever, but it probably comes back to not smart enough, don't have enough time, don't have enough money, all of those various things. So, it all ties together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, these are all just patterns, right? So one of the most effective questions we ask is, where did this pattern originate? When's the first time you remember running this pattern? And why? 9 times out of 10, it's because we watched our parents do it, right? Or we watched a sibling do it, or we watched somebody carry it out that we thought highly of. Or we saw the result that they got and we wanted that kind of result. Or we got a bad result from doing it that way, that maybe included some sort of emotional reaction like shame or pain. And then, we turned 180 and
we don't want to do that again.
Not going to do that ever again. Yeah, that was actually the case with the COO I talked to yesterday. And 5 minutes into the session, we got right to it. And she said, oh, well, I was fired. I said, you need to be more aggressive, when you're talking to potential CEOs that will hire you. And she said, I was fired for being aggressive.
So right there, her mind said, no, don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't do that. That was really painful.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was more a matter of, okay, first of all, that was his problem, because, he was threatened or whatever. But then there's, different ways. So maybe it's not, and, I love the whole thing with women, are we pushy? Are we bossy? Are we bitchy? All those B words. And so there's ways to go about it differently that get you to the same result rather than just, nope, not going to do that.
Right. But that illustrates the simplicity, the oversimplicity of how our unconscious mind works. It's almost just black and white. Right. It's almost just binary.
Yeah. Right. No, danger, not doing that again.
Yep. Also, that's something to key in on. I just got this question at a speech that I gave on Monday to a group of high-powered women. And they said, the question was something along the lines of, well, how do I know when I'm faced with just 2 options, what the best one is, or if limiting beliefs are a factor? I said, well, that is your first red flag that it is limiting beliefs, because when it's a binary, when it's only this way or this way, that's it. That's all you see, and you're trying to choose between them. I said, that is a big tip off. Don't fall into the trap, and pull back a little bit and ask yourself, okay, what are all my options? Right. I did this with the COO yesterday. She was 2 options. And I said, okay, wait, hold on. There are a lot more than 2 options here. Set those 2 aside. And let's make a list of all the other options. The first one she came up with was the best one. Right. Yeah. Outside of the binary.
Well, and the binary tends to be the extreme. That you get it, you don't get it. And it's like, okay, well, you can get it, but there's all the different ways to get it. Or maybe even in the not getting it, there's still positives and things like that.
But that shows that your unconscious mind is stuck. Right. Yeah. It's looping through that same pattern.
Right. Yeah. And, as you were talking about that, I was thinking, say fire, you touched it, it hurt. Okay. You're not going to touch it again. And you don't stop to think, okay, I could put on an oven mitt. I could, all the various ways to still do what you needed to do without getting burned.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, because this is another pattern of the unconscious mind. Pardon me. And it's running from pain. Right. So this, and the hot burner and getting burned is an excellent analogy for that. It's an excellent illustration. So if you believe you're going to experience pain in something, then you're going to take immediate action, and you're going to keep taking action to avoid it. Right. And a lot of times I ask clients, okay, wait a minute. Are you playing to not fail, or are you playing to win?
Right.
And most of the time it's I'm playing not to fail, which is costing them dearly in the win category. Right? They're just kind of sitting back playing it safe. And if you quickly look at everything you're doing, like all the significant actions that you're taking, are they to bring pleasure, like the result that you really want at the magnitude that you want?
Right.
Or are they simply to avoid pain or your perceived pain that might come?
Right.
More often than not, I mean, it's really the 90-10 rule. 90% of us will take action over and over and over again to avoid pain.
Right.
But only 10% of us have really learned how our unconscious mind works and how that pattern works, and will take action to bring pleasure.
Right. Yeah. I was talking with someone just the other day, and she was telling me, she needed to get out more and network. And so I said, I mean, and she's kind of starting her own business. And so she was wanting to know what groups I go to and things like that. And, and we, and she said, but will you be there? I said, okay. And I said, sure, I'm more than happy to go and introduce you, take you as my guest, do whatever. And she said, I know I'm going to embarrass myself. And I said, why? Well, I don't like talking in front of people. I don't, and I said, well, there's a variety of ways to do this. I mean, there are some groups that you go to where you have to stand up in front of everybody and say, hi, you give your 30-second elevator speech. And for many people, I mean, including sometimes people like me who do this all the time, there are times when I just don't want to do that. But for other people, I mean, it really is just terrifying. Okay, so you don't go to those type of groups. You go to ones where you're going to introduce yourself just to one person. And so I'm kind of talking her through this. And I said, and I am more than happy to go a couple of times and introduce you around. I said, until you're, comfortable with doing it yourself. But she had talked herself out of it before she ever even went, because she might embarrass herself. And and I finally said, and if you say the wrong thing, what's going to happen? I mean, is it really going to be so disastrous? And she laughed and she said, well, no, not really. And so she realized, okay, this really would be doable. But I had the same conversation several years ago with somebody who really was deathly afraid of going and talking to people. And the thought of it, she would hyperventilate. I mean, even one-on-one conversations. And so, I thought, okay, I am not in any way equipped to deal with this, because there's clearly something else that is there. And so that comes back to exactly what we were saying. We need help, and we need to know to ask for help, and if public speaking is your fear, well, then try Toastmasters, all these various things. Take a buddy to whatever it is, or delve even deeper and work with an organization like yours.
Yeah. So let me share this statistic with everybody, and it's worth writing down.
Okay.
Because once I share it with you and you write it down and you look at it and you keep it in mind as you walk through your day, you're going to realize that it's exactly right. So, and this statistic is, I'm going to give you 2 percentages in a second, and they come from several studies that all report similar findings. So if you think about an iceberg, and, the top smaller part of the iceberg is above the surface of the water, and you can see it. That represents your conscious mind.
Okay.
Below the surface of the water, which is the majority of the iceberg, and you can't see it.
Yeah, the huge majority.
Right. That represents your unconscious mind. Now, here are the percentages to apply to that iceberg.
Okay.
The conscious mind only makes up 0.8% of everything we think and do in a day.
Wow. So not even 1%.
Yeah. 99.2% makes up our unconscious thoughts and actions every day. Yeah. Our unconscious mind processes 400 billion bits of information per second. The conscious mind only processes 2,000 per second.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is why I said our unconscious mind is the most simplistic yet powerful machine. And as you go throughout your day, just take notice of when you're doing what you're doing consciously and everything that happens unconsciously.
Right.
Because it is absolutely true. So that's why, everything we do is working with the unconscious mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh, we have just a couple of minutes left. And I want to, it's fun. We just started doing video and I forget we still have many people who listen. So when I hold the book up and don't give the title, people don't know what it is. So it's Unlimiting Your Beliefs, 7 Keys to Greater Success in Your Personal and Professional Life, told through your journey to the toughest race in the world. So again, I encourage folks to get this. It's a great story, plus it talks about Colorado, but tell us, a little bit more about what you can do working with people who would work with you.
Okay. So again, we work with executives and leaders, whether you're leading yourself or the entire company or you're leading a team, you're a leader, right? And so that's really who we work with. We do one-on-one coaching.
Okay.
And we can work with anyone, anywhere. So it doesn't have to be in Denver.
You can do Zoom.
We'll either work over the phone or Zoom or Skype. Yeah, which is a beautiful thing, which actually makes it easier on the client,
right?
To think through and work through some of these things. And we, our clients just rave because usually they achieve their initial set of goals and objectives 6 weeks into our 6-month engagement.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're literally like, oh my gosh, now I want to work on this and this and this and this. Right. Can we do that? Yeah. Here's the other thing that they don't realize when we start, but they realize it very, very quickly once we've engaged, which is they think that we're only going to work on their professional patterns, right? But here's the thing. They're all intertwined with personal patterns, right? So it's how it's showing up, which the doorway to that is probably in your professional world, but it always goes back to something personally that's going on because that pattern is showing up somewhere else too, or many other places.
If you're having trouble leading in the office, your kids are probably running roughshod at home, or your volunteer activities, you're having trouble there. So yeah, it's not just a professional life.
Yeah. So oftentimes I just explain it this way. We work with folks who are looking to scale rapidly. So whether you're looking to scale your business rapidly, you're looking to scale yourself, your leadership abilities, some other, ability that you want to improve upon and have greater success and impact with, that's exactly who we work with.
Right. Well, how do people find you and connect with you online?
It's really easy. Go to velocityleadershipconsulting.com.
Perfect.
And there's the thing I spoke about at the beginning on how to conquer limiting beliefs, as well as a whole bunch of other things. I've done a video series about these behavioral blind spots that block our elevated levels of success. Those are there. A few other really valuable things that clients have loved. So if you go to velocityleadershipconsulting.com, put a / and then the word greater, meaning greater success, then all of these things are available to you. And you can also get in touch with me, which I love. So if you want to have a chat about your specific behavioral blind spots or what you think they might be, or maybe test me on what I think they are after talking with you, I'd love to hear from you.
Great. I love it. Well, Karen, this really has been wonderful. And, to me, this is just absolutely fascinating. I recognize that there are definitely ways in my own life that I'm limiting myself, not just, I can't remember names, but, lots of various things. So I just love it when I get to talk about stuff like this. But what would you like to leave our listeners and our viewers with?
Oh, well, one of my favorite quotes, which is, the state of your life is nothing more than the state of your mind.
I love that.
Whatever it is, you can turn it around to create the results that you want. You really can. And this is why I do shows like this, right? Because I am nothing special. I am not extraordinary. I'm a very ordinary person. And yet, we're all ordinarily extraordinary,
yes.
right? And that's why it's the final thing I want to leave with everyone. Sometimes I do a show like this and people get this idea that, I am a natural talent, or, there's something sensational and innate ability that I have. No, it's not. We're all created equal. And it's, and this is why I wrote the book, because I wanted to share these keys with everyone and make them accessible to everyone, because they are the difference makers.
I love it. Well, with that, we're going to leave it. I am Deb Creer. I've been having an absolutely wonderful time talking with Karen Brown. Can't wait to do it again, which we definitely will. And so until next time, everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer. Join us next time for more real-life stories and techniques to power up your business.
You've been listening to C-Suite Radio. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.